It is May 12th, 2025, and as India and Pakistan have agreed to a ceasefire, the focus is now on what happened during last week's deadly fight between the two and what weaponry was used. In particular, when it comes to Pakistan's side, the use of Chinese made J 10 aircraft to launch air to air missiles, bringing down multiple French made jets that were used by India. It's sending a very powerful message to the world about China's military might in terms of weaponry and technology and what that could mean for a future proxy war with the United States. I think it's safe to say that the US is not too happy about the current situation. Joining me now to discuss is Carl Zaw, a geopolitical analyst and host of the Silk and Steel podcast. Carl, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks for inviting me.
Now, I'm glad I get to talk to you today. I know that there is a lot going on in the world, but I want to start off with the latest when it comes to this ongoing conflict between India and Pakistan because they reached a ceasefire over the weekend after days of deadly fighting. But the discussion surrounding this conflict is not just about these two countries, it's about the weaponry they each used, which for Pakistan was Chinese made J 10 aircraft used to launch air to air missiles, bringing down multiple Indian fighter jets that were made in France. So, I want to know, how do you view this conflict and really what it has told the world about the capabilities of China and its military aircraft?
This is really, some people call this a deep seek moment for the Chinese weapon systems, because for the longest time, even though China has been upgrading its weapon systems, there's always a shadow of doubt that casted. Many people call the Chinese weapons knockoffs. They're not going to work. They're made in China, must be of shoddy quality. And now we've seen it went head to toe against the best, most advanced European fighter jet, the French-made Rafale. And this is undeniable now. Now we have confirmation from both French intelligence official and American official that indeed the Pakistan-operated J10c has shot down at least two Indian jets, at least one of which is a French-made Rafale, which cost over $100 million per plane. Whereas the Chinese made J10c has a unit cost about $40 to $50 million per plane. So there's a big difference in terms of dollar terms. And on top of that, the India government is paying France for training and spare parts. So just 10 days before the conflict, India announced they had a new deal with France to purchase 26 additional Rafale jets for $7.4 billion. If you work out the math, that's almost like $284 million per plane. And in fact, it's quite embarrassing both for the Indian Air Force and the French company Dassault, which produced the Rafale plane. Because this is the first time Rafale has seen in combat, and it's the first time the Rafale has been shut down, and it was done by, again, a Chinese-made J10c fighter plane equipped with a Chinese-made PL-15 air-to-air missile.
Yeah, and it's interesting as you're noting there because that was kind of the reaction that I saw to it, which is, for so long, yes, we've had all of this talk about China modernizing its military, right? But we haven't really known what does that actually look like. And I thought it was also interesting. I know you mentioned this over on X, that it was reported that obviously, yes, India is using these French fighter jets instead of the US made F-18s amid reports that Washington has been pressuring them to make the switch.
The US is trying to show the French Rafales in poor light to sell their jets. And India is in the market for more jets, more than 100 jets. The Rafale remains the frontrunner, but the Americans want India to buy their jets, like the F-18 Super Hornet, the same one that keeps falling off their aircraft carrier in the Red Sea.
So I guess maybe good that they didn't have those, at least for the US, because that would have been really embarrassing. But this still sends a very important message about China's position in the global arms race. And yet, China is the one that is not arming extremists, overthrowing governments, right? Kind of forcing its power on various countries around the world. That's the US, and the US tries to act like we have all of this military might. But what does that tell us when we're now in this position when it's like China may be a real competitor, but they're waiting to show that might until it needs to be used?
One thing to note is China do not attach any preconditions when they sell their weapons. So Pakistan also bought American made F-16 jets, but US had Pakistan sign a end user agreement where Pakistan must agree not to use F-16 in a war with India, which kind of severely restricts the utility of F-16. And this is why in the latest conflicts, Pakistan rely on the Chinese J10c instead. So this is a big difference. China will not use its weapon sales try to influence a country's foreign policy, for example, like U.S. often likes to do, and it's just purely about a monetary transaction. China sold weapons also to the Gulf country UAE, and now we have seen China is conducting joint air exercise with the Egyptian Air Force. There was amazing videos showing Chinese jet flying with the Egyptian Air Force over the pyramids in Cairo. And there's a rumor that Egypt will be next in line to acquire J10C. And this latest air battle that took place in India and Pakistan, this only give further impetus for other countries who are thinking about acquiring Chinese jet, because first of all, they're proven to be reliable in battle, and it's a lot cheaper than the alternative. They're one third or one fifth the price of a European or American jet, and it's just as good in battle. So that would persuade a lot of people, especially in the global South countries, countries like Egypt, who would possibly look to diversify their military supplier when they realize, they may not be able to rely on Washington, in times of war. And here you have China, who can supply reliable weapon system at much cheaper price.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting aspect to this too, because instead of the US looking at this situation and saying, okay, maybe we should back off from China, right? Maybe we should stop trying to pursue an open proxy war against China. Instead, my fear is that the US and the neocons in Washington are almost going to double down and now wanting to target China even more, because we saw this when China started to increase its military spending, when it started to talk about wanting to modernize its military. The US started freaking out and was like, no, we have to go up against China even harder. So, what are your concerns about the US march to war with China and where it stands right now?
Well, this should ring an alarm bell in Washington, because J10C is not the latest in the Chinese arsenal. In fact, the People's Liberation Army Air Force is about to retire the J10s in their inventory. Now they have already moved on to J20, which is a stealth air fighter. J10C is not a stealth air fighter. It's considered 4.5 generation fighter. And right now, China already are mass producing J20 stealth fighters, whereas the U.S. equivalent is F-35. But we know F-35 is a really versatile plane, because sometimes they double up as a submarine in the bottom of the ocean. And let's face it, F-35 is such a boondoggle. It's not designed to fight a war. It's designed to feed the military industrial complex. It's designed to make all the lobbyists rich from the kickbacks, and make sure the top brass can retire comfortably in the Bahamas. They're not designed to fight wars. And then there's a matter of industrial capacity. China can crank out these stealth fighters at much greater rate than Washington at this point. And this is due to the policy of Wall Street to offsource American manufacturing to East Asia for the last 40 years. The manufacturing has hollowed out so much in the United States. Now it's starting to affect the defense industries. The Pentagon has admitted that China has 200 times the shipbuilding capability than United States. The U.S. have about 3 shipyards that can produce warships, whereas any one of China's shipyards, China's Jiangnan shipyard next to Shanghai, is about 7 times larger than any of the American shipyard. And right now, United States is now going to seeking help from South Korea and Japan in order to help U.S. with a naval buildup. So essentially, the Pentagon already gave up on bring manufacturing back home to the U.S. They went to there was actually a U.S. law that prohibits United States from purchasing foreign warships, and now the Pentagon is working with the Congress to skirt that legislation. Now they're trying to get U.S. warship fitted, retrofitted, or built in South Korean shipyard because it will be much cheaper. This is where we are today. United States now have to rely on South Korea and Japan to continue its naval buildup versus China. I mean, this is kind of the sad state of the way that the U.S. elite have hollowed out its own manufacturing. Now it's even affecting the military-industrial complex. I think they were going to look at the air battle in India, Pakistan, and realize, oh crap, China has much more up their sleeves in terms of next generation weapons. Also, China just tested their 6th generation fighters, 6th generation stealth fighter, 2 prototypes, whereas United States next 6th generation air fighter, the so-called NGAD, the next generation air dominance fighter, that's still on the drawing board. They're still debating whether it's going to be a manned aircraft, unmanned aircraft, and it's still at the PowerPoint presentation phase, whereas China already had their prototype flown in the sky, and they're looking to mass produce at maybe in the 2030s. So United States is already behind. It's behind so much now. US is falling behind in its military industrial complex. So that's where we are, Rachel.
Yeah, I never thought I would see the day, right? With the US, given the fact that, we talk about how the US has outsourced so much, right? So much of our manufacturing to other countries, and that the military industrial complex was our main product. And yet now we're seeing that that's not even going to be able to stand up to the competition from a country like China. Yeah, I know that there is certainly a lot at stake here all around, and it'll be very interesting to see how the Trump administration decides to handle things involving China moving forward. A lot for us to continue to keep an eye on. And I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today to break down all of the latest here. Carl Zaw, a geopolitical analyst and host of the Silk and Steel podcast. Thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for inviting me.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. That's where you'll find ad-free videos and new weekly episodes of my exclusive series for paid subscribers called Sanctioned. You can also check out Sanctioned over on my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Rachel Blevins. As always, thank you all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.